Media Network. I am Mike Kadlick from CLNS, joined by 98.5 The Sports Hub's Alex Barth. We're here to break down yet another disastrous Patriots loss, another heartbreaker. This time against the Bengals on Christmas Eve. They lose 22-18 in basically the only way that this team can at this point. Fumble by Rhamondre Stevenson at the end of at the goal line after an 18-point failed comeback attempt. I mean, we'll talk about it later, Alex. The one thing I say about this team now is at least they fight. At least they show something and they don't just, wilter and die. They fight for each other, but sometimes it's just not enough. Before we get into the game, though, let's talk about some Patriots news from today. And it was on Hunter Henry's injury. Again, something we'll get into when we talk about the offense and the route spacing and what have you. But Hunter Henry gets hurt his knee. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network called it day-to-day. Said he's sore but has a chance to play against Miami on Sunday. So, I mean, that's huge for their tight end room.
Yeah, that's massive because they need him if they're going to fix their issues, and one of their biggest issues being throwing the ball in the red zone. Well, first they actually have to throw it in the red zone. That would be one step, but you'd think that they're more willing to do that if they have the guy who probably is their best red zone target, relatively speaking, and Hunter Henry. You got to have him healthy. So that's big. It sounds like it was just a, bone-on-bone thing, probably more of a stinger than anything else, maybe a bruise, but playing for the playoffs at this point. So if you can be out there, you got to be out there. And I think that's basically what this is. This could be a situation where, he doesn't practice this week, or he doesn't practice the first 2 days and is limited on Friday and then plays on Sunday or whatever. But, outside of structural damage, this is kind of the time of year where you're playing. It might hurt, but you're playing. And I'm going to guess that's what's going on.
Playing for the playoffs, we are still saying that heading into Week 17. The Patriots somehow, thanks basically to Tua throwing 3 picks and 3 consecutive drives yesterday.
Did you see Tua turned the ball over? Was trending on Twitter yesterday.
Oh my God, no, I didn't. That's good stuff. That guy.
Yeah.
He's, as much as he's a roller coaster, my opinion on him is a roller coaster. And after yesterday, man, that was tough sledding. But so, yeah, Hunter Henry looks like he'll be able to play Sunday, so good stuff. The other news is about our quarterback, Mac Jones. Playing the game, he is being evaluated by the NFL for a possible fine, not a suspension, according to Rappaport, for a low hit on Eli Apple. He was running him down. Eli Apple looked like he was trying to get a block on Tyquan Thornton, and Mac Jones basically went at his legs. I didn't upload the video here, so we can't show it to you, but I'm sure you all saw it. I'm sure you've all heard about it. A lot of chatter now about Mac Jones being a dirty player. There's been several examples last 2 years. The play on Brian Burns, Mac sliding and kicking Jaquan Brisker where the sun don't shine. There's a lot of guys do this slide thing. Mark Daniels from Mass Live tweeted a video of it, and Joe Burrow, and a lot of guys kind of just have their cleats up in the air. So I don't know about that one, but man, another dirty-ish play from Mac Jones. What'd you think of it? Does he deserve to be fined?
Yeah, real quick on the slide, that's actually a coaching point. Brady used to do that. You want to dissuade the defender from coming down on top of you late. It's not exactly a clean play. It's basically a dirty play to offset a dirty play. It's just an ugly part of football. Yeah. The Brian Burns play was dirty. And yes, this one he should not have done that. And his explanation today was basically, well, I didn't want him catching up to Tyquan Thornton, so Thornton couldn't make the tackle. Then push him. Just push him.
Right.
You don't need to go for it. It's not necessarily that he hit him. I don't necessarily think that just making contact with him it's the way he went about it. It's going for his knee. And the reality is, if he didn't have a history, maybe you look at it and you say, all right, well, he's trying to make a play and he's got to take down a guy bigger than him. But I think you're at the point now where he's one of those guys. He's kind of gained that reputation. For lack of a better example, like Marcus Smart or Brad Marchand, where even when they do something borderline, because of their reputation, because of their history, it gets put under the microscope more than maybe the average player. Mac's probably now in that category, in that group. So he's got to be careful. And look, I said last week with the blow up down on the goal line and he snaps the ball too early, I think that his emotions, and I've said this before, I love that he plays with emotion, but you can't let that negatively impact your play. I think you saw it last week, right? In that instance at the goal line, and you saw it there. That whole play really was just emotional mistakes by Mac Jones. He needs to take the sack there. Look, he didn't get great protection. I don't think that sack would have been his fault, but he needs to know to take the sack there and not do too much. Almost derailed the drive. Probably should have derailed the drive. I was surprised that play stood as an incompletion.
Right.
And then obviously the hit's completely unnecessary and uncalled for. So a play where he's just got to take a deep breath, realize it's not there. And I get that's frustrating because there's been a lot of that this year where he just kind of has to chalk the play up to a loss to no fault of his own. And he obviously doesn't want to do that. And you understand why maybe he's pushing a little more than he should, but this is just what this team is this year. You're going to have to take L's, and he's competitive. He doesn't want to do that. But that's a case where you got to do it. And when it doesn't go your way, go back to the sideline. Like, chew out Matt Patricia all you want as you're walking over there, but do not take it out on the other team. Don't do it. That's just not a good look.
I'm with you because you talk about the microscope when you're a guy like, Marchand and Marcus Smart, but that microscope's even bigger when you're a quarterback too, because you're supposed to be the leader. You're supposed to be, even head, even keeled guy. And yeah, Mac's definitely shown that frustration a lot more outward over the last few weeks, for better or for worse, I guess. Again, I'm with you on, having that fire around, when your coaches aren't calling plays right, and you kind of, you want to win, right? You want to win in this league. It's hard to win. Max says it every week, but when it bubbles over to, going low on other guys on other teams, and Brian Burns last year and looking like he's kind of pulling his ankle over a little bit, I'm with you. There's no place in the game for it. It's something he has to clean up and not let his emotions get the best of him in those situations, because it's going to hit his pocket here again. It's already happened this year on another thing. When he threw the ball at, who was it? The guy on, was it Epinesa?
Oh, that was stupid.
But he was
the
fine.
Guy on the Bills. That was, of all the things he's done this year, for that to be the one he was fined for. Please. He was tossing the ball to the referee and the player happened to be standing next to him. That was a stupid
I'm
fine.
with you. I'm with you on that one.
He's had more finable plays this year that weren't. So we can, but that I'm not going to nitpick him on that play, man. That was just stupid.
I'm with you, but the point being, it's hitting his pocket again, so he's going to have to be more careful.
Who knows with the NFL? Like, he'll get fined for that nonsense, but watch, he won't get fined for this, right?
Yeah, I know. That's the other thing. So, what do you think about a suspension? Okay, go.
Okay, no. So it was literally what you were about to say about a suspension.
Okay. Yeah,
he's not getting suspended because it would have happened already. They can't.
Right.
Like, fines come out on Saturday. The league can't suspend a player on Saturday. That would just have there would be major issues in terms of collusion and with the gambling markets. That comes, today would have been the latest that. And I think they did announce, did Randy Gregory get suspended, or was he just fined?
I'm not sure.
He got suspended, and O'Day, the other guy, they got in the fight, right? And that game happened a day after the Patriots game. If Mac Jones was going to get suspended, he would have been it would have been with that announcement. He would have been suspended already. It's not happening. So all you zappy weirdos can calm down. He's not starting this week.
That was in Rappaport's report as well, I believe, was that they're looking at a fine, they're not suspending.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that something like that warrants a suspension? It's tough to suspend quarterbacks. He is now technically a repeat offender. Should he do you think it warrants one?
No. Suspension is like, again, the Randy Gregory incident. They got in a fist fight after the game, and that's a 1-game suspension. Suspensions to me, suspensions to me are either things in between plays, not during a play, or like overly egregious, like throwing a helmet at somebody, coming off the bench to instigate something. Things like out. It was a cheap shot, but I don't feel out of place calling it a football act, right? To me, a suspension is something that's like, if Max straight up tackles him, that's maybe worth the suspension. But it would be a little soft to suspend him for that, and people will call me a homer for that. But I'd say if it was the other way around, look, the hit on Jacoby Myers in the Bills game was more egregious than that, and that wasn't worth a suspension. Yeah. So,
I'm with you. It's like that play when Gronk, put Tre'Davious White into the ground a few years ago. That was a suspendable play. That was after the play. That was worth a suspension. Yeah. And he basically came out after that and said, like, look, that was wrong. But so Mac Jones probably.
Meanwhile, you didn't hear them. In Buffalo, they called Gronk a dirty player, but in Buffalo, they call anybody a dirty player who even lays a finger on one of their players. You didn't really hear nationally them calling Gronk a dirty player after that. So just proves the narrative changes. But winning cures all. Winning, and that's something we're going to say a ton this offseason, right? Winning cures all. Just as it relates to Mac Jones as a whole, people are talking about, well, he can't handle it. Like, so what if the coaching is bad? He can't handle it. Like, why don't they get a guy who can handle it? Why is there so much emphasis on getting a quarterback who will play well in bad situations when you could just improve the situation, which is probably easier to do? Right. Like, I'm not super concerned that the quarterback can't handle a losing environment, because if I'm building the team, I don't plan on the quarterback being in a losing environment that often, all, if at all. If you're like basing your evaluation of the quarterback on what he looks like when the environment's bad around him, you're completely missing the point. The point is it's a bad environment. Fix it and then see what he looks like. Oh, well, he can't play when his coaches are bad and the guys around him are messing up. Okay, who can? And even if so what? So that's just going to be the situation as long as he's here? Bad coaches and poor communication? If we're just planning for that, what's the point? Right. What's the point of any of it, right? So I'm not going to jump to, he can't handle losing well. Well, he shouldn't be losing. Don't judge him on when he loses, because if he's going to lose that much, he's not the answer regardless of how he takes it. He could lose a ton, handle it all in stride, and it wouldn't make him any better. It wouldn't make him any better of a quarterback because he's still losing. So he was fine last year when they were winning games. He's a guy that's accustomed to a certain level of success. In high school, he played for the winningest coach in the history of high school football in Florida. I don't know a ton about that program, but I would assume if you've won more games in Florida than anybody else, you probably run a pretty tight ship. Things are probably, the gears are pretty greased, right? He then goes to Alabama, which is another airtight organization, right? Militaristic. Then he comes here for a year under Josh McDaniels, the guy who created the system with Brady. There's order, there's organization. He hasn't been in anything like this at least since he was 14, maybe ever. I mean, going back to Pop Warner, right, where there's this level of dysfunction. I just think he's a kid that doesn't know how to handle it. I don't think it's that he doesn't take losing well. I think he just doesn't know what to do because it's never happened.
He's never been around it, right?
Right. So you hope that this is all a learning experience and not a pattern, but I'm not going to say, he sucks when everything around him is falling apart, so he's not good. The long-term plan shouldn't be having things around him falling apart. So let's get those fixed and then see what he looks like. Because if he looks better, then him not being able to handle a mess of a situation is a non-factor, which it should be, right? Right. Can Patrick Mahomes handle a bad situation? We don't know. He's never been in one, right? Can Josh Allen handle a bad situation? He's never really been in one. We don't know, right? Aaron Rodgers, can he handle a bad situation? No, he can't.
Not really. Yeah.
He's still a future Hall of Famer. Nobody's holding that against him because, again, it's on the team to put him in a good situation. So I just think it's a really weird argument. I get why people are going to it, but I would encourage you, if you're going to that argument, don't, because you're putting the cart so far ahead of the horse when you make that argument.
And when everyone chants for Bailey Zappi and wants Bailey Zappi, it's not, first of all, it's not fair to Bailey Zappi to throw him into this situation. And B, what is that going to show you? Nothing, because the situation is so bad around them. So it makes no sense for a quarterback change. And I'm with you as far as, well, Matt can't do it under pressure. Like, not a lot of guys can. It's like trying to relate it to Tom Brady here. Like, Tom Brady was good when the things were a mess, but that's Tom Brady. That's the greatest quarterback of all time.
And was it ever really a mess for him here? Like in 19?
Not really. 19,
in 19 it kind of was. And the wheels fell off the wagon. And by the way, it's a mess in Tampa right now. And he's under 500.
Not great. Yeah.
So, since we're doing this, hang on. Since we're doing this, not that one. It's a stupid take.
Career.
This one. Zach Wilson gets so much crap, but Matt gets excuses.
So this is where I was going to go with the last part, right? About having a good, sorry to cut you off, about having a good situation around you. That's when you can move on, because Zach Wilson has it around him. Mac Jones does not have it around him. You need to see what he can be. If Mac's still bad with a great situation, then we have the conversation.
Well, I would even say Mac Jones has done more, significantly more, to prove he is an NFL quarterback than Zach Wilson has. And it's really not close. Mac Jones last year, I know people are going to say he faded down the stretch. He still played well enough to get them to the playoffs. He still played well enough to get them to the playoffs. Did Zach Wilson do that? No. Zach Wilson has been trashed for 2 years. The other big difference here, because it's not just about what you do on the field, you have to be able to command a locker room.
Yep.
Mac Jones still has a lot of fans in that locker room, which is important. Meanwhile, Zach Wilson's getting benched for the second time this season in large part because he's lost that locker room. Guys don't want to play for him. They don't want to play with him. And that's a big part of being an NFL quarterback. So when Zach Wilson leads a team to the playoffs, and even on a losing team, still has guys like Matthew Slater and Devin McCourty defending him, not just not knocking him, defending him. Matthew Slater said they wanted Mac Jones to accept more of a leadership role. It's a massive take from a guy like Matthew Slater.
Right.
It's night and day. And I keep seeing this. Oh, well, why don't you trade Mac Jones for Zach Wilson? And it's a reset for both.
Ridiculous.
Mac Jones may or may not be an NFL quarterback. Zach Wilson isn't. He's not right now, and he is light years away from getting to that point if he ever gets there, both on a physical and mental level.
So, I'm with you. Just breaking Patriots-ish news. Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is back in the concussion protocol. So his status is in doubt for Sunday. Looked like I saw a tweet from Taylor Kyles that said Tua may have played the entire second half with a concussion. I don't know what the heck these NFL spotters are doing anymore,
or the Dolphins for that matter.
Right, but Tua looks like again this would be his third concussion this season. That tells me we're at Monday now. It's too soon to know if he'll be cleared, according to Mike McDaniel, but I feel like he's not going to play at this point. So that's looking like Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah, I know, but we'll get into that more so later on / in the Dolphins preview later this week. But I guess that's a good segue talking about Mac and into the offense as a whole, because against the Bengals on Saturday they had nothing going in the first half. Mac finished 20 of 33 for 240 and 2 touchdowns a pick. But at one point in the first half, this was my favorite thing to look at, just as far as how much different these two offenses are. There was one point in the first half, Joe Burrow was 13 of 15 for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Mac was 0 for 1. This was a tale of two halves in this game. They got it moving in the second half, but the first half was god-awful. The end of the first half was god-awful, and it's those uncharacteristic, undisciplined ways the Patriots are in. That's becoming the norm now this year. Like, at the end of the half, they run a quick pass, they call timeout, and they take a knee. It didn't have much effect on the game, but it's like, what is even going on with this operation? Again, they kind of slang it in the second half. KB gets it going again, but, I mean, the offense was just, again, it wasn't great. It was not great again.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to something we talked a lot about last week, right? No football game in the history of the sport has ever been won or lost on a single play. And obviously, Rhamondre's fumble is a huge play in that game. But when you spot the other team a quarter lead, like a 15-minute head start,
right?
At that point, you pretty much already lost the game. In the first quarter of that game, the Bengals had 14 points. The Patriots had 10 yards.
Yeah.
Like the Bengals scored on their only 2 first quarter drives. I think their third drive went from the first into the second quarter, but their 2 full drives in the first quarter were touchdowns. Patriots had 10 yards. So you're 15 minutes in, the Bengals have shown up, you're still getting off the buses.
Right.
Like that, you can't start that slow, not with this team. And look, the defense eventually figured it out and they played a great second half, but if the offense just shows some sort of fight early, maybe it changes the situation there. So that to me was the bigger issue. Like Rhamondre's fumble is not a great play. Obviously, it's not to excuse it. It obviously happened.
Right.
But figured out earlier in the game and you're not in that situation. That was my big takeaway from this game. Was that they essentially spotted the Bengals. They gave them a 15-minute head start. You start playing, we'll catch up. You go ahead. And there's no coming back from that. There just isn't.
Right. I do want to talk about the tight end situation. And I kind of want to link it into linkedin.com/beat because I don't know if Hunter Henry looking like he might be back, but if you're a tight end looking for a job, go to linkedin.com/beat. Or the Patriots should post the tight end job rather. These days, every new potential hire feels like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. We use LinkedIn Jobs here at CLNS Media, and we can't recommend it enough. It's super easy to post your job, then add your listing in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. As we enter the end of 2022, now's the perfect time to add the right team member and end the year strong. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat. That's linkedin.com/beat to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Getting back to the tie-in with the tight ends, Alex. So Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith both left this game at one point due to injury. And it was both because of how poorly the Patriots are spacing out their routes. The first play was that third and 5, 3rd and 6, whatever it was.
3rd and 4. Mike Giardi has the dots on Twitter. You can check that out.
Yeah. Go check it out because, first of all, there's no one at the sticks. And second of all, they don't even have their mesh right at 15 yards. And they just run into each other and bang knees. We've talked about it on here, but that's training camp stuff that you work on. That's stuff you work on in August. I'm high, you're low, we mess up the defenders. If you're running into each other in week 15, I'm sorry. And the fact that it turned into an injury is just terrible. Luckily, Henry's coming back. The other one, Jonnu Smith, got whacked in the head. Him and KB are in the same exact spot on the right flat, basically. It looks like Jonnu ran a little hook route and KB ran a slant basically behind him. They end up in the same exact spot. Mac throws the ball in there, and the guy covering Kendrick Bourne comes in and basically knocks Jonnu Smith's head off. He goes into concussion protocol because of that. So then you turn over to Scotty Washington, who ends up making the play of the game on offense on the Jacoby Myers touchdown.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that not only are the problems on offense not letting you run plays, but you're literally injuring players on the fact that you can't space your routes out. So that was something that stuck out to me. Again, it's not only is it hindering the way they're moving the football, but 2 guys leave the game because of it.
So I will say, this isn't really a defense. This is more just like adding context to it from a football point of view. It may be the play design. It also, just from what Bill said today and from some of the reports, what people were suggesting, I wonder if not everybody knew the play. I think what actually happened was that it was that one or both of those guys didn't run the route they were supposed to run. Like, the play wasn't designed to look like that. Now, that's still not great. Right. It might honestly be worse because if right. If they're at least running the routes they're assigned to run, then hey, they're following right. But they can't even get everybody on the same page in terms of the play call. There's no coordination in the offense. The offense is struggling with coordination. It's uncoordinated, dare I say, right? So, man, whatever the case, again, I don't say that as an excuse. I literally just say that to add context. Like, that's how I read the situation, was somebody ran the wrong route. Either way, this is stuff you do in OTAs. Okay, so you're going to come to this point, and then you're going to come to this point, so you guys should pass about here, and, like, you want to make your break hit. Like, this is all stuff you iron out in May. And it's Christmas Eve, and they still can't get that right. Right? So I just, you can't win football games like that. You simply, when it's December and not everybody knows what the play is, and this has been a pattern all year. This is why they're calling those timeouts, like those random timeouts early in drives. This is why they're getting all these false start penalties, illegal formation, because not everybody knows what the play is, I think, a good amount of the time. Right. And to add to that, remember why they changed the offense in the first place? To simplify it. To make it easier for everybody to understand, for the receivers specifically, and the tight ends and the running backs to understand. And guys look lost. They didn't look lost like this last year. Might have happened like 2 or 3 times, but nothing really stands out in terms of like, wow, they can't get lined up. Right. Certainly not at this time of year. So it just all feeds into the same thing, that they're just they're not even like they're stages behind where they should be. And when I mean stages, I mean stages of the season.
Right.
We're in the latter part of the regular season, and these are things that you should get done at the very latest early in the preseason, joint practices. So it's, it's just another example of something that's been a theme all year. They can't get lined up. They can't get the play calling, operational stuff. And it's, again, you're not going to be able to move the ball. You're not really going to be able to do anything offensively. Like some of the stuff people want to see, hey, run, play, action. Hey, throw the ball down the field. Hey, RPO, right? Those are steps like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in running an offense.
Right.
Well, if you can't do step 1, you can't move on to step 2. And that's kind of what's been happening at times this year.
It's ridiculous. Again, and you look at, you talk about that mesh route and, whether it was just not knowing the play at all and maybe they mirrored each other and they were both supposed to be at that, part. You don't know that. But you look and they completely hit a wall at the first half. And then, well, the other thing actually quickly on third down conversions, there's no one at the sticks on that play, whether it was not the wrong play call, what have you. But then later in the game, they need another third down conversion, then they're throwing it short of the sticks.
Right. So that was
they don't time up anything. They don't create any, none of their play calls make sense, specifically on third down.
So I don't know about you. I also consider that spacing. Spacing to me is not just where the receivers are relative to each other, but where they are relative to the
this
situation.
Way and this way. Yeah, sure.
Right. But not just the spacing from receiver to receiver. It's also, on 3rd and 4, do you have a guy 5 yards downfield? Right. Yes or no? If you're in the red zone, how much space are you using on the field overall? Even if they're all properly spaced, but it's 3rd and 1, and you're running 4 verts with the running back staying in a block, the 4 receivers may be properly spaced from each other, but what's the point? They're not spaced properly for the. There might be another term for that. I'm not sure technically that might be a separate term, but all kinds of spacing issues, right? Like the 3rd and 4 early in the game, everybody's up the field, 15 yards down the field. And by the way, on long developing routes, when you're struggling to block, most of those were multi-cut routes. And then they had a 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12 late in the game, I think is the play you're referring to.
Yeah.
And nobody's more than 5 yards downfield. So which is it? Right? They just seem to kind of ignore where the sticks are and just they run what they're going to run, which goes back to a theme we've talked about a lot this year, Mike, which is they're sort of just calling plays one at a time. There's not a ton of rhythm to it. They're not stringing plays together. There's not a ton of we're going to give this look to set up this play. They just sort of call a play and then they call another play without any consideration of what came before it or what came after it.
Because he's never done it before. He's never done it before. He doesn't know how to call a rhythmic offense. You can keep going. I just had to.
No, I was literally just going to say it's like some just playing Madden with your buddies, right? Oh, I like this play. I'm going to call this. Oh, I like this play. You're not really thinking about, all right, well, we're going to hit him with the play action. We're going to run stretch to the left, and then we're going to play action stretch to the left, boot to the right, pull the tight end across. There isn't any of that. And you need to be able to do that at this level. You just do. Unless you are the Miami Dolphins or the San Francisco 49ers, you have that kind of talent. Although those teams do that stuff anyway. But unless you have that kind of talent, you need to add a level of misdirection to it and just situational awareness to it. 3rd and 5, don't run everybody 20 yards downfield. That doesn't help. It's not doing anything. You're not catching them sleeping. All right, it's 3rd and 5. They're going to be all up. That's not how defense works. Defense plays in levels. You're not just going to catch them sleeping like that.
I like our new nickname for Matt Patricia, the offensive uncoordinator. And a guy who was basically in Patricia's doghouse from the start, from August up until the start of the second half this year, was Kendrick Bourne. They finally seemed to throw that out the window going into the second half, and KB was awesome. Scored his first touchdown of the season. He had his first career 100-yard receiving game, 6 catches on 9 targets, and gave them life. And I tweeted it. I've talked about it. This is a guy who can't leave New England next year. He's a guy they need to continue to keep in this offense. There was a lot of rumblings at the trade deadline. There's been talks about him being a trade piece. They need to just get Matt Patricia out of here and get KB out of that damn doghouse because he's a great player. He's a great receiver in this system that they kind of want to run. getting a guy like Bill O'Brien here, which we can touch on that later on today. We can touch on that down the road because it'll be the topic of discussion. But KB is a guy you need to keep in this offense because he's very, very good.
Yeah, it's really a shame. I mean, I said at the beginning
It
of the
is.
season, I thought he'd be a 1,000-yard receiver. And I almost feel like that game on Saturday vindicates that. Because you look at what he does, but they kind of just, that didn't really look like they've been running most of the year. That actually sort of looked like the Bailey Zappi offense, what they ran in the second half, where they just kind of, they spaced it out. It's great. They put Kendrick Bourne on the field. That changes the way that the other team defends him, because Kendrick Bourne, not only is he maybe Mac's favorite receiver, he's their most explosive. Like, this is a team that needs to be able to create after the catch, and Kendrick Bourne can do that probably better than anybody else on the roster. I say it all the time. From week 3 to week 13 last year, which I think is a good size sample size, he was on a 1,000-yard pace. A 1,000-yard pace his first year in the system with a rookie quarterback. How that guy falls out of favor, and I know that, you know, he kind of maybe talked out of turn about the offense a little bit in the preseason or over the summer in an interview with Mike Reese, and then he gets in the fight at training camp, and then he says the things after the Bills game. Man, it is back in the day with Tom Brady. Yeah, you could maybe sit that guy and make a point. You can't do that anymore. This team is just so different. And I think it goes back to the first game of the year. Miami, they can't move the ball at all. They finally put him in the game late in the fourth quarter. Boom, first play, 40-yard completion up the sideline.
Yep.
He changes their offense. I'm not saying he's that true number one. Like, people want them to go out, right? I've talked about DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not saying he's at that level, but I think he's as close as they have. He's a dynamic player. He's a guy that defenses have to be aware of and have to maybe defend differently. And he's also just a really good character guy, which, when you're struggling like this, having a guy that's going to keep everybody up, also, like, sneaky valuable. And a ton of credit to Kendrick Bourne. He could have quit. He could have just, they're not playing me. I'm going to check out. I'm going to request trade in the offseason. But, we've heard from Mac. We've heard from other players. He's still engaged. He's still, hyping guys up. He's being a leader.
He is. He ran out the tunnel. One thing on that with KB and, just him being a character guy, squeezed out of the offense, not involved, reprimanded for speaking out, whatever. I noticed this on Saturday. The first 3 guys running out of the tunnel are Mac Jones, David Andrews, and Kendrick Bourne. He's always ready to play. He always wants to play. He's there for his guys. He's sprinting out of the tunnel. Another guy who checks out often, Trent Brown. He walks out of the tunnel and doesn't seem to care like he's there. Kendrick Bourne cares. He wants to be there. I know he's just a bigger guy and,
Trent's kind of his own thing. Like, the Super Bowl year, he would act that same way, and then as soon as the ball snaps, he turns on and mauls somebody. But
sure. The point being, Kendrick Bourne, he's a great character guy. He wants to be there.
Kendrick Bourne, a guy like, between what he does as a football player, what he does as a leader, Kendrick Bourne can play for my team any day. I'll find a spot for him. I'll find a place for him. I'd put him on the field more often than not. But even if I'm loaded at wide receiver, I'll find a spot for him on my team. I'm going to keep him around because that's the kind of guy you want in the trenches with you. That's the kind of guy you want to go to war with. So I'm glad he finally got a shot to play. Like you said, I hope he's around next year. Is he done? For as positive as he's being, he may say, you know what,
he's being a pro's pro, and
these are my guys, and I'm in this situation, and he stick with it. But as soon as I can get out of here in the offseason, I want out of here. Like, I wouldn't blame him for that.
Yeah.
But I hope he's here next year. I hope he's more involved next year. I think he showed you in that game, and he showed you in those windows where he's been able to play this year just how good he is. And this will go down, honestly, as one of the biggest what ifs of the season. And there's a lot of what ifs this season. I think one of the biggest ones is what if Kendrick Bourne had a fair shake in terms of playtime. He's their 5th most used receiver this year in terms of snaps. And not in percentage, in terms of total snaps. So he's played less snaps. And look, he probably should be playing less snaps than Jacoby Myers. I think Jacoby should be the most used wide receiver. But Jacoby's also missed, 3 games, 4 games? Devontae Parker's missed time. He's played less than Devontae Parker. Tyquan Thornton's missed time. He's played less than Tyquan Thornton, right?
Yep.
There's no reason he should be out there. Yeah. He should be out there, and he hasn't been.
I'm with you. It's a shame. It's a huge what if. I guess lastly on the offense, I want to talk about the Hail Mary touchdown. It's pretty funny. A week after Mac Jones is not allowed to throw a Hail Mary. They lose the game on it. He essentially chucks up a 3rd and 29. Scotty Washington tip drills it to Jacoby Myers of all people, who comes down with the Hail Mary. I thought it was a heads up situational play by both of those guys. It felt like it was something. It was almost like the play was drawn up that way. Probably not, but just the way that Mac chucks it up, throws it 55 yards. Scotty Washington doesn't even look like he's really trying to make the catch. It's almost like in the air he sees Jacoby coming underneath him and tips it directly to him. Jacoby, right place, right time, smart football player, makes the play. And that sort of jump-started this whole game, where the one thing I'll give this team credit for is they fight. And they don't just roll over and die. They could have easily, in a situation where they no longer at the time controlled their own destiny, other things needed to happen. Down 22-0 to the Cincinnati Bengals, who just won 6 straight, top of the AFC. Joe Burrow's a beast, 2 dominant receivers, what have you. The narrative's just not there for the Patriots, and this team could have easily just said, you know what, forget it, roll over, die, don't give in, run the football, get out of here. But they didn't. They fought, and that play showed it. I thought that kind of jump started all that, and the Marcus Jones pick six. Like, they continue to, whether they don't want to play for their coaches or not because of the disaster that it is, they play for each other. And I think that's a huge part of being a football team. And I thought that play kind of just, showed it all.
Yeah. I kind of what I said about Kendrick Bourne, I think applies to a lot of guys on this team. It would be really easy for guys to check out at this point. And there is a ton of pride in that locker room, and they're not going to say, this thing's a mess and we're not going anywhere. And, we should just sit down. For the most part, I think you've seen that from some guys, but
sure,
I'd say Mac Jones and the skill position players in particular, like Mac's fiery because he still wants to win. He's fiery because he's not giving up. He's not quitting. The other guy I'll say is David Andrews. He's come back from 3 injuries this year now. It would have been very, he's got a 4-year contract and he's gotten paid, and his legacy said he's got a ring. He's also got family at home and stuff. And he still keeps going back out there. So a ton of credit to him. I do want to talk about one other thing with the offense. Sure. And it's been a reoccurring theme on this show, Mike. And that's Rhamondre Stevenson. Mm-hmm. And look, we talked about the fumble, and he's got to do a better job of holding onto that ball, certainly. But this is what I was talking about back in October when I said we
talked about this after the game. Yep.
Right. You can't keep involving him as much as you are, because it's his first full season in the NFL. He only played 12 games last year, and a bunch of those he really was active, but he didn't play. He played 5 snaps. Right? You're putting an insane workload on this kid and just trusting he'll be there fully at the end of the year. And look at what's happened. He had 13 carries for 30 yards. And that's not all on him, but early in the year, he was creating despite the offensive line not playing well, because he was creating on his own. You just don't see that same drive. And I don't mean mental drive. I mean leg drive and motor. He looks like a guy that's kind of, the season's beaten down on him. He's 9th in the league in touches. We've asked him a number of times this year. I mean, I think going back to before Halloween.
Yeah.
Hey, you're playing a ton. How do you feel? And he's always been, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. After that game on Saturday was the first time he said, yeah, I'm a little banged up right now.
Yeah.
That's the first time he said anything other than I'm good. Right. And he ultimately said, it's the NFL, it's late in the season, but that was the first admittance of, this is getting to me.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it in the product. And it's a real shame, because they had Damian Harris healthy. They could have used him to take some of the workload off. We know Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong at least can kind of play. Right. Those are guys that could take the workload off. And maybe Rhamondre is just a little fresher right now. And maybe he's not pressing like he has in the last 2 games in making these mistakes. I understand why he feels like he has to make plays like that, because the whole offense has been put on his shoulders.
And he's been their best player. So, right. Yeah.
Right. If the team doesn't succeed, he doesn't succeed. So I understand why he's feeling like this. They did this to themselves. This is what, there only been 3 seasons. It's 2 backs in the last 10 years where a Patriots running back has played more than 50% of the snaps. 2 of those were James White, and 1 was Shane Vereen. And those are guys that, one, it's a little different. They're not constantly running between the tackles. And they both did it as veterans. Not veterans, but guys who'd been in the league multiple years, had been through the ringer. And they were doing it under different circumstances. Rhamondre's at, I think, 68%. for usage rate. Neither of those guys, they were over 50, but neither of them was above 60.
Yeah.
This is so unheard of with the Patriots. And I think part of it is like they were always trying to avoid this exact situation. And there's a famous quote about, Bill, are you opposed to having a feature back? And he goes, you mean like when Corey Dillon ran for 1,600 yards? Like, I get that. That was a very different NFL. That was a very different time. And I think the Patriots at one point were okay with it, had adjusted away from it to avoid this exact situation. And by the way, this isn't a knock on Rhamondre. Go through and look at the guys who lead the league in touches generally. They all fade at the end of the season. It's player mismanagement. It's why the Cowboys always fade at the end of the year, because they overwork Ezekiel Elliott early on and he either gets hurt or he's just tired, right?
Tennessee Titans too.
Tennessee Titans, why they always fade down the stretch. That's a great example. The Panthers, when they had Christian McCaffrey, and the Niners, meanwhile, have done a very good job of managing his workload. Now they can do that because they have so much talent, but
the Niners do that, and they just have replaceable backs too, and they run a great system out there anyway. But point being,
the Patriots have, I don't know, like not comparable. Like I don't think that Harris are stronger necessarily better than Rhamondre Stevenson, but they're NFL backs. They can give you good snaps. And then you get more great snaps from Rhamondre later on. And now he's banged up. And it feels like an avoidable situation, right? It feels like a situation that they didn't need to be in, that they put themselves in, and it's unfortunate because the kid was having an outstanding season. Like you said, he probably was their best player on offense. And I said it back in October. It reminds me of Matthew Judon last year. It's just, you can only, even if guys are in the best condition, every player has their limit. Every player has their pitch count. You can only ask so much of a guy. And it feels like maybe in his first full year, this Rhamondre is kind of getting towards that ceiling.
An avoidable situation. That was an avoidable situation. Kendrick Bourne is an avoidable situation.
Kendrick Bourne not playing is an avoidable situation.
Yeah, correct.
There's a lot of them. Flipping the tackles was an avoidable situation. Like all of it.
Another avoidable situation, Alex? Paying too much subscriptions.
Nice.
Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? You probably don't. As most Americans have no idea how many subscriptions they're actually paying for every month. You spend anywhere, around $80 a month on subscriptions. That's what you think anyway, when actually it's closer to $200 or more. It could be an unused Amazon Prime account, a Hulu account, ESPN Plus, anything that you're paying for that you have no idea that, it's actually coming out of your wallet. They never get streamed, draining your bank account. You could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions that you don't even know that you're paying for. Not me, though, because I use an app called Truebill, or formerly known as Truebill, called Rocket Money. It takes care of it all. The app shows you all your subscriptions in one place and then cancels for you whatever you don't want still. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't know you were paying for. You may even find out you've been double charged for a subscription. To cancel, all you have to do is press the big cancel button on the screen, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Get rid of useless subscriptions with Rocket Money now. Go to rocketmoney.com/PatsBeat. Seriously, you can save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/PatsBeat. Cancel your unnecessary subscriptions right now at rocketmoney.com/PatsBeat. Frankly, Alex, I thought that was one of my better ad transitions because
no, that was I saw where you're going for it too. You had it lined up. I'm proud of you.
It came to me in the middle of it too. I was like, oh, avoidable. You know what's avoidable? Useless subscriptions. Rocketmoney.com/PatsBeat. Go to it and save some cash. Let's talk about the defense. This game, like I said earlier, it was a tale of two halves. Joe Barth was a beast in the first half, 3 first-half touchdowns. But the offense looked at the defense adjusted, and
what did you just do to your mic?
I don't know why.
You sound like a transformer.
Wait, it's happening to you too.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Is this an internet thing? Hello? Is it still going?
Does the chat hear us like that too? Chat, give us a show. Tell us if we sound bad.
Yeah. Are people hearing this in the chat? Yeah, I think people are hearing it in the chat. All right, let's quick adjust. I'm going to flip my mic off and flip it back on.
Robo mic. I like that.
You're back.
Oh, so are you.
All right. Okay, cool. All right.
There we go. Good stuff. Adjust on the fly.
I think people got a kick out of that. So give us a thumbs up in the chat. Give us a like, actually. Give us a like on the video if you enjoyed that. I think we all needed that. The way this season, I think we needed that.
I was like, are we going to have to shut this thing down? Here we go. All right, let's talk defense. Tail of two halves, Burrow went off. Second half, they completely wilted. Pat's defense was awesome in the second half. I thought Marcus Jones' pick six really, sparked the whole thing. That kid's just a stud. He led them with 14 tackles. And what I noticed, Alex, and you talked about it here, you talked about it on the Sports Hub, you wrote about it, you tweeted about it. The pass rush was one of the main reasons why the second half was so great for them. The play specifically on Marcus Jones, they got in his face. Burrow put it up and on the same page as Jamar Chase, and Marcus Jones takes it for 6. So I thought, the defense was so much better in the second half, and it's kind of a shame they couldn't play like that all game.
Yeah. But that's what defense is sometimes, especially against a good offense. You're going to get beat. You got to kind of make your adjustments, and making adjustments is a good thing. We haven't talked about that a lot with this team this year, but I thought they made some good adjustments. Like you said, the pass rush was really good. I think the biggest thing, and this is more of an off-season conversation, it goes back to something we talked about in training camp, is they don't have a ton of size at corner. They just don't.
Right.
You're out there, and I think Marcus Jones has looked really good, and he had some good reps against T. Higgins in that game, but at a certain point, it's 6'5" on 5'8", and then you got 6'3" on 5'8" in the slot with Boyd and Miles Bryant. And then you have Jonathan Jones on Jamar Chase, which is a 3-inch height differential. And honestly, Chase plays a lot bigger than 6'1". So Jalen Mills being out hurt, you lose size there. Jack Jones is 5'11", but he's a guy who plays bigger. So he's a guy you kind of missed. They need more on the boundary. You're going to have to, if they want to contend, I'm talking about next year now.
Right.
You're going to need to beat teams like the Bengals. You're going to need to beat teams like, honestly, I think the Raiders turn it around next year, and they're going to be in much better shape next year if they're healthy. That's a team with big receivers.
Yep.
I know there's other teams in the AFC, but the Ravens.
The Steelers.
Well, the Steelers aren't good. They don't have a quarterback.
I know, but they have big receivers.
But I'm talking about teams you're going to have to go through. Like the Ravens are a team you're going to have to go through, right?
Right.
They have bigger receivers. The Chargers have big receivers.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Jalen Mills at 6'1" and nobody else over 5'11" is tough. You're just and look, they needed to add speed in the secondary. It was a big problem last year, and they did it. They added speed. They moved John Jones to the outside. They draft Marcus Jones and Jack Jones, two guys who can fly. Like, I'm not necessarily the moves were bad. I just think they were maybe one move short, whether it was keeping Terrence Mitchell, or I guess they kept him and he got signed off the practice squad, but keeping him on the active roster, or I know he wasn't the biggest guy, but he was bigger.
Right.
Or just going out in free agency, just signing one of these veterans that's like 6'1", 6'2". I'm not saying the guy needs to be a number one corner, but more just like a matchup piece. Not necessarily the guy that's going to play 80% of the snaps every game, but like, hey, all this team's receivers are 6'2" and bigger. We're going to have a role for you today. Right? We've seen them at times against some big receivers. We've seen them put Kyle Duggar out on the boundary as a boundary corner, or Adrian Phillips out as a boundary corner, which, doesn't necessarily not work, but you're taking those guys out of the position where they play their best football. So I'd like to see him add a big receiver in the offseason. I don't know that it's like a top 50 draft pick they need to do it with. Would not be opposed to them adding Joey Porter Jr., but I don't think that's going to happen for a couple of reasons. But, look, they've drafted the last couple of years. They've taken quarterbacks in like the 4th and 5th round, and those guys have proved they can play. Like, essentially, they could draft
that's a position they're good at developing.
Right, they can develop those guys, or just go get a veteran. Like, honestly, I think a veteran would be better just because there's a lot of young guys in that room, especially if John Jones leaves in free agency. It's a really young room.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, I think adding a big corner doesn't need to be a focus addition, but I think adding a big corner this offseason would be for this kind of matchup. And this is a team, again, they're going to have to beat a team like this, like Baltimore, like Vegas, like the Chargers. You're going to need another, even if Jalen Mills is healthy, you're going to need another big corner. So
you know who it's going to be, right?
Who?
Juwan Williams.
Well, his contract's up.
Oh, it is? Okay.
I think ideally, like, that was the thing. I was kind of wondering if he was going to hover around the roster, maybe go on the practice squad. Like, so that's a perfect example where he's a guy you can keep on the practice squad, and then in this game you elevate him. Now, I don't think
work.
Right?
Right.
Like, this is what I'm talking about. Just have a guy on the have a guy on the practice squad, even so in this spot, like specifically big team, your number one outside corner's hurt. You just elevate him and have something.
Right.
I thought you were going to say Steph. I would say they're
That'd
going to
be
bring
good
back
too.
Steph. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Well,
love that, but
well, yeah. Next year. Well, that's because it's next year's Brady and Edelman and Gronk and Gilmore
yeah,
and
we're getting Bam
Darrell
back
Revis
together.
and yeah, right.
What's
Corey
Ty Law
Dillon.
doing?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so that's again. I talk about it in the future tense because what are they going to do in this game? I
Right.
was a little surprised they didn't try putting Duggar on T Higgins, but I think they did that. The game where it really stood out is they did that with Claypool when he was in
Right.
Pittsburgh.
Yep.
T Higgins is a much better receiver than
Oh
Chase
yeah.
Claypool, so like that might have been why, but it's just it's kind of an example. And I've said a lot, and I'm going to say it a lot over the next few weeks. I don't think roster talent is their biggest issue, just raw roster talent. But that is one space where they maybe have a hole that you're not going to fix that schematically. You're not going to
Right.
fix that with better coaching. You're not going to fix that with young players growing into a role. That is just simply a spot where they need to add a player.
I'm with you. The pass rush got after it again too, a little bit. I mean, Matt Judon, Josh Uche each have another sack. I think that's Uche's what 6 straight game with a sack. I mean,
Yeah.
again, they're. I talked about comparing them to Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard when those guys are healthy. Those bookends on the edge for them. We've kind of been focusing on next year for what I feel like has been a month and a half, 2 months now. But those are two guys that need to stick around next year, and that's something you can build off on the defense too, because you get it's looking like next year this Patriots team, depending on what happens, can compete again. And it starts on defense with those two pass rushers. Those guys are beasts.
Yeah, I don't like. You go back to 2020, right? It was really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel because they were so far away. There was so much that needed to be done. They needed a
Yep.
quarterback. They needed
Playing
to
guys like
overhaul.
Damiere Byrd on offense.
Right. They need to overhaul their receivers.
No offense to
Steph
Damiere
and
Byrd.
JC Jackson were both they were up at the end of their contracts.
Right.
There wasn't really a pass rush. Like there was so many boxes to check. I think we're much further down the tunnel. The light doesn't look any closer just because there's something like blocking. There's one big thing blocking the end of the tunnel. And once that moves, and it's not one thing, but I think we're close to the end of the tunnel. It's just the things they need feel bigger, right? I don't think that the to-do list is as long. It's pressing items, but I don't think that list is as long as it was a while ago. So, and they don't have a ton of key free agents. Jonathan Jones is the big one, but he's been great this year. This isn't a knock on him, but I don't know that they need him back. They still have Jalen Mills to play on the boundary on one side. They have Jack Jones on the other. Like I said, they probably need to add a big corner one way or the other. So those can be your three boundary corners. Marcus Jones looks damn good in the slot. So, if you're going to move him to offense, maybe it's another conversation, but I think it's not like last year when they lost JC Jackson. It was, okay, this is a problem. If Jonathan Jones goes and gets paid, they're kind of in place where they're probably going to be okay. After him, in terms of guys who are up, I mean, Damian Harris, who basically hasn't played this year, right? Nelson Aguilar, who I think they're ready to move on from. He really hasn't played the last couple of weeks, coach's decision. Devin McCourty is kind of a big one, but he's sort of struggled down the stretch here. And one way or the other, they're going to need a safety, whether he comes back or not. But it's not like last year they got close, right? It did feel like they were close last year. And then they lost 2 starting guards, a starting corner, a couple of linebackers. Like they lost, especially on defense, they lost talent. They're not really losing a ton of talent this offseason, and they have a ton of space to add. So I don't think you need people talking about tank, blow it up, trade everybody. No, I think that's unnecessary at this point. I think you're close enough that if you put the right pieces in the offseason, you can put all the pieces you need in place in one offseason. I didn't think you could do that last year. I didn't think you could add everything you needed to add realistically in one offseason. I think this offseason they can. If you do all that, then we get a fair look at Mac Jones. And either he's the guy and great, and here we go, and we're off and running, or he's not the guy and you have to hit the reset button anyway, right? And you just delay it by a year, which that's really not the worst thing in the world. So long term, they're not in bad shape. I don't know about these next 2 games, but long term, I really don't think they're in as bad shape as maybe people paint it to be.
That's where I was going to wrap this up and put the Bengals game behind us. Patriots lose 22-18. Mount a comeback, showed some life, showed that They have the talent to compete. It's just, it's a core problem. They do still control their own destiny, like we said at the beginning of the show. No Tua now, it's looking like for the Dolphins, and potentially the Bills sitting players in Week 18. Can the Patriots make the playoffs? I'll just give it to you there. What do you think about these next two games and what they've shown a little bit of life against, two teams that might not be in their best position right now?
They got to be able to stop that Miami RPO, and I just don't know. Like, that's a play Teddy Bridgewater runs very well, and
we don't even know
well
if Bill knows what an RPO is. Like we said,
well, yeah,
do we even know?
I reading back over that conversation, I do think it was what I said at the time, that they have some weird terminology for certain things.
I was with you. I was only messing around, right?
Yeah, no, I know. I meant to qualify that, but they have to be able to stop that play. And I don't think that Tua being out makes a ton of difference there. Like Teddy Bridgewater once said at a high level. And then it becomes, if the Bills have everything locked up, Sean McDermott has a hair across his ass for Bill Belichick for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Is he dumb enough to play everybody and go all out, even if he has everything locked up, to just kind of give an F you to Bill? He might be dumb enough to do that. I wouldn't. I am still traumatized by Wes Welker tearing his ACL in a meaningless Week 17. Was that against Houston, right? And there was it happened to Rodney too, I think, against Pittsburgh, where he got hurt.
Yeah, that was years back, but yes.
Yeah. So I'm always for it to just take that week as a second bite. Maybe play like a quarter, go, whatever.
Yeah,
the Bills dumb enough to go full go. They might be, but I mean, who is it? It's Kyle Orton or Jay Cutler or whoever the hell their backup is. JP Lossman. Case Keenum. I know. Yeah, I know.
It's Jeff Toole.
It's Jeff. It's Jeff George. Like they can beat Case Keenum. They should, because I would imagine if it's Case Keenum, and I'd imagine Diggs isn't playing in that case either, right? So, if it all goes their way, and Tua's injury, like I said, I don't think it's a major difference, but it's a difference. If it all breaks their way, yeah, they absolutely can get it. Again, crazy. I think some things have to break their way. It's not impossible. And by the way, if we got this game tonight, if the Colts beat the Chargers and the Patriots went out, they're not just in, they're the 6th seed.
That's just ridiculous.
And everybody's saying, well, why do you want to make the playoffs? You're going to, go out there and get smacked by Kansas City. Well, we just saw them play Cincinnati kind of tight. If you get the 6th seed, you probably play in Cincinnati. And look, game's going to be in Cincinnati. You're going to have a much more motivated Bengals team, so who knows? But I don't think Cincinnati's in the class that Kansas City's in or the class that Buffalo's in. So
you should never not want to get to the playoffs, especially when you're in this position here, right? We talked about it. Anything can happen any given Sunday. So it's crazy, again, to think that they still have that track, but they do. We've been talking about it for the last 2 weeks, the last 2 losses, that all you got to do is win out and you can win some of these games. And they've lost 2 straight, and yet here we are, 2 weeks out. And if they win, they're in. So again, Pats lose 22-18. You have anything else to add on the Patriots Bengals game before we transition and preview that Monday Night Football game?
No, I think we got it.
Perfect. Pats lose 22-18. Heartbreaking finish. Showed some fight. That's my main takeaway here. Again, before we move on, it's just that they could have rolled over and they didn't, and that's something to hang your hat on. These guys play for each other, and there seems to still be a sort of camaraderie in that locker room. No one's really turned against each other, so that's something to build on, if anything. Monday Night Football. We have the Colts at the Chargers. I'm back to my not knowing where the games are. I believe it's at Indy. It's at Lucas Oil. Justin Herbert, stud, probably one of my favorite players in the NFL, taking on the Colts, and Nick Foles gets the start because the Colts made another quarterback change after Matt Ryan blew another 4 or 5 possession lead last weekend. What do you think of this game? I believe the spread is the Chargers are only 3.5 point favorites on the road, though. What do you think? Who do you like?
So, for one thing, the Colts are coming off a really embarrassing upset, so they've got that little edge, right? They're really playing for their own. They're playing for pride. Big pride point.
Yep.
Nick Foles loves a good upset. We know that all too well, unfortunately.
Yep.
And the Chargers are really have been really incapable of back-to-back wins under Brandon Staley. Like, they can't consistently play well. They won 2 games in a row against 2 probable playoff teams. Brandon Staley's team doesn't keep that going. They are due for. They're the Chargers. They are still they can play in LA all they want. They are still the San Diego Chargers deep down.
Yep.
They're due for a letdown spot. I think this is it. I'm like
All right.
kidding. I'm like half kidding on that.
You're taking the Colts. No, you're taking the Colts. That's what you're doing.
All right.
Alex has the Colts. I have the Chargers. Go ahead.
Let me put it this way: the Chargers should. Here's how I'll lay that out. The Chargers should win this game. They have no excuse to lose this game. But no team has lost more games they should win in the NFL in the last 2 years than the Chargers.
It's a fair point.
So that's kind of where I'm like, if any team was going to lose in this spot, it's the team that's playing. It's the team that's favored.
I just have a hard time betting against Justin Herbert and going against Justin Herbert ever. He shows every single week that, regardless of win or loss, that's a guy who plays well despite the situation around him, like we talked about earlier. Justin Herbert continues to be a beast. He threads the needle. He has one of the strongest arms in the game. They have a good supporting cast on offense, 2 stud receivers and Austin Eckler at running back. And again, this is where the coach gets in the way in LA, but not tonight. I think they take down Indy at Lucas Oil. So I have the Chargers. Alex has the Colts. Congrats, you get to back Nick Foles. That's always fun. I'm sure he broke your heart a few years ago.
I think I was right wasn't I right last time we did the picks and it was like an upset? What was the Thursday game I was right on an upset recently.
It was the 49ers played someone. 49ers Rams? No.
Yeah, and I took Brock Purdy. Whoever it was, no, I remember because I went on a whole thing about taking Brock Purdy.
Yeah, so you won. So Alex is on a streak, or he can make it a winning streak now if the Colts win tonight. So go watch that game. Make sure you pay attention to who we picked. That'll do it for us. Patriots Beat here on CLNS Media. He's Alex Barth. Follow him on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Read his stuff on the 98.5 The Sports Hub. Also tune your radio dials to 98.5 because Barth's been killing it on fill-ins with the schedule over there all wonky. So go check that out.
I'll be on tomorrow, tomorrow's Tuesday, recording this Monday night. I'll be on Tuesday, 10 to 2 a.m., 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and then Friday, 10 to 2 as well with Leroy Irvin. So
good stuff.
Hear me throughout the week.
Yeah, go check those guys out. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Kadlick. Read my stuff at clnsmedia.com. Me and Alex will be back on Thursday to preview the Patriots-Dolphins game, adding a little wrinkle because, again, Tua looks like he's out with a concussion. So that'll be good. Pats control their own destiny, lose 22-18 to the Bengals. We'll be back on Thursday.